Hello, everyone. Welcome to the OSF for Institutions overview webinar. I'll say a couple of things as folks trickle in. First thing is that if you're not able to stay for the duration of the webinar, that's fine. We'll be sending out a webinar recording to all registrants and attendees. You will be getting a follow-up email from me. You can always email myself or Gretchen Giggin, who is actually on this webinar, helping to run it and to answer a lot of Q&A questions if you drop them in the Q&A section of the webinar. Please do introduce yourself in the chat, but if you do have questions for either myself or Gretchen Giggin, who's our member services manager, our ninja librarian metadata expert at COS and who works on the product team with me, you can drop those in the Q&A. And tell us where you're coming from. If you're already an OSF Institutions member, if you're a new member and looking to understand the product a little bit more, or if you're thinking about joining for your institution, would be great to hear that. I'll say a couple other things too for folks who are just coming in. I'm really, the aim of this webinar is to speak to librarians, research support staff who might be thinking about the OSF for Institutions product. That's one of a number of products that we offer that as paid products for organizations or institutions. I'll say that our product for individual researchers is always free. So if you don't already have an OSF account, you can join right now in about 5 minutes and start an account for you as an individual. And along those lines, Gretchen's going to help me launch a really quick Zoom survey that's going to kind of assess your familiarity with the OSF and OSF institutions. It's just in the Zoom chat. It's just like 3 questions. And this helps me understand how deeply I need to dive into some topics. If you, again, have not made an OSF account before, feel free while I'm chatting to just make one. It doesn't really take very long, and it can help you kind of play around while within the OSF while I'm talking. Just another note is that some of the screenshots that you may see in the webinar slightly differ from what we have in on the OSF right now, because we've just released a brand new front end redevelopment of our UI and parts of our UX. If you have questions about any of that or thoughts or feedback, feel free to, again, drop those in the chat or email us afterwards. But I'll show you some live versions of what OSF Institutions looks like on the platform, so you can see what that new change looks like. Okay, so while that poll is going on in the background, I'll also say that if you are not research support staff, if you are not a librarian, you can still stay. This can also help you kind of understand what the impact of OSF institutional membership might have on you as an individual user and the material that you post to the OSF or publish to the OSF as a repository. If you have questions in general about OSF institutions membership, we have our site here, cos.io/products/OSF institutions. You can also just Google OSF institutions. We have a lot of different products that might be actually a better fit for what you're looking for than OSF institutions, including something called OSF collections, which allows you to moderate a number of different projects, or OSF registries, which allow you to moderate and curate registrations. We also have OSF preprints, which are a kind of a white labeled branded service for preprint services that we support on the OSF. I'll also note too, if you're not familiar with some changes we've recently made to OSF preprints, individual users are no longer able to publish a OSF are no longer able to publish a preprint to the general OSF preprint service. We, for a variety of different reasons, have closed down that service. So you can still submit preprints to community-operated preprint services, branded preprint services, of which there are many that we support. But individual users can no longer just post to any old to our general OSF preprint service. Because of some editorial and spam issues, we wanted to make sure that we had some moderation of that service through our branded OSF preprint communities. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the OSF is. I will say, Gretchen, I'm not sure if I was able to see the results of the poll, but that's okay. It's fine. They're usually quite similar. But to previous webinars, I mean. But just to give you a sense of the OSF, if you're unfamiliar with what it is, and I like to talk about this up front because it can kind of clarify how OSF institutions can impact individual users. So as an individual user on the OSF, you can create a free account, you can link your ORCID ID, you can sign in to the OSF also using single sign-on from your institution. And this is one of the big benefits of paying for OSF institutional membership is your community of researchers can use single sign-on to sign on to the OSF to verify their institutional affiliation. There's essentially three things that you can do on the OSF to vastly simplify the workflows. You can work or create a project and publish them. You can work in or create a registration and publish them, and you can work in and create a preprint or publish them. And I call these things, I will call them throughout the duration of the webinar, I will call these objects for lack of a better word. So, and a thing to say straight off the bat is that the terms of service, the current terms of service on the OSF mean that individual users who again can join for free and publish material on the OSF for free, do not have constraints around how many projects or registrations or preprints they can create and publish on the OSF. Some of the material they can publish on the OSF may be private, so only they can see it, and that's true with projects and embargoed registrations, for example. We do try to encourage as much as possible users to publish publicly the material and objects they're working on, but they don't have to. But they also own that material, so they are essentially the copyright holders of that material. And this is relevant because OSF institutions does not function as a typical repository in the sense, or institutional repository in the sense that the user sort of hands over the material to an institution or to research support staff or to libraries for archiving. They still own that material, and ultimately, especially for projects, can actually delete that material or make parts of it private or public. So that's something to flag because that is often something that is a misunderstanding around the OSF institutional product. So if you do have questions about how that works, please drop them in the Q&A. We can answer those or Gretchen can answer them as I'm speaking. So a couple things about projects on the OSF. So projects, a lot of people use projects for collaboration. They're a really excellent place for a team to kind of show work, create like a centralized workspace where a lot of different types of files and materials that might not fit in another repository or need to be linked in some way with a overarching theme of the project, they can all be organized in one space. And that's why people like to use projects. It's a different type of object than exists on, other types of similar generalist repositories like Figshare, for example, because of the ability to connect lots of different types of material that may exist on the OSF or actually elsewhere on other databases or in other storage locations. Files can be uploaded to projects. They can be versioned for tracking purposes. You can, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, you can integrate existing storage, other storage providers within a project so that different users can view project files in different storage locations, but within the same project. You can add separate components, which are almost like sub-projects within a project. And you can have different collaborators on those components that may have different permissions to view or edit those components. So the privacy settings and the also the licensing settings on components and project level are highly modifiable, and that's why also a lot of researchers like to use projects, and kind of how the OSF is differentiated from other generalist repositories. When a project is public, you can also mint a DOI on the project, and that is that is also one of the persistent identifiers, that DOI, that kind of is a part of the overarching persistent identifier kind of graph that we have to increase the fairness of data that is on the OSF. So making that material as findable, accessible, interoperable, and reproducible as possible means trying to get as many persistent identifiers affiliated with that project or that object on the OSF. And a DOI is one of them. ORCID is another. ROR identifier, which we'll talk about, is another. And as is a lot of our required and optional metadata on the OSF. I'll also note that our API can be used by your organization or by groups within your organization in a variety of different ways. We have lots of examples of that, which we can provide. If you just shoot me an email, I can kind of show you how some other research groups are utilizing our API to propagate data and metadata in different ways. And we're working to build out our open source community and the types of projects that are not just being worked on, but are also accessible to everybody who is a user or a fee-for-service member. So one of the other objects on the OSF that I was talking about that you may or may not be familiar with is registration. Registration can do a lot of different things. Pre-registration, which is a subtype of registration, helps separate out some hypothesis generating from hypothesis testing research. It's a way we know through meta-science research, we know that registration and pre-registration can improve quality and transparency and reproducibility of research. It can really help to clearly report a study and helps others who want to build on the study. Now, registrations are more often found and used in certain disciplines, social sciences, psychology, economics, and clinical sciences. We are not a HIPAA compliant clinical research platform. However, there is a lot of health research and some material that is maybe affiliated with clinical research, for example, that might be published on another registry like clinicaltrials.gov. There may be some publicly available material that's also affiliated with that research that's on the OSF published as a registration. So registrations, you can think of them as the most permanent object on the OSF. They're time-stamped, they're archived, and they're not deletable. So unlike a project, which is very flexible, can be deleted, made public or private, a registration, the most flexibility you have with it is that you have a specific number of updates to a registration that you can make, only 4. And you have a specific embargo period that you can use if you don't want to make the registration public just yet because you're working on the study, but it will still be an archived and time-stamped object, which will eventually be made public after the embargo is over. So that's another object on the OSF. And again, I'm talking about these objects because what the OSF institutional product does is it aggregates all of the different possible objects on the OSF in one place and affiliates your institution with that material. A couple of cool things that the OSF does that a lot of other generalist repositories don't do. A is we have the ability to publish a registration, which is not something that other repositories, especially in the NIH Gray repository, generalist repository ecosystem initiative don't have. So OSF registrations, you can create them from scratch, and we have a number of different templates for registrations, including a general template. We also have the ability of, if you are interested in creating custom templates for research, but you can do that from scratch, but you can also create a registration that's linked and created from an OSF project. So it pulls metadata, files, material from a parent project or component and puts it in a registration. This workflow is often used kind of within the research lifecycle by researchers at your institution. So there might be a research collaboration going on between a number of researchers at your institution and at one or multiple other institutions. They're using perhaps a partially private project as a sandbox to collect material to have that sort of centralized location for supplementary material protocols, documentation. And then there is a decision at some point that's made to actually register a study, pulls material and data from that project into a registration. And then that research group may decide they want to make the entire project private and have the only public part of that collaboration be the registration. Excuse me. Eventually, they may also decide to publish a preprint, and there's the ability to link the project, the registration, and the preprint in all together, so that you have the sort of documentation and the sharing of material across the entire research lifecycle. And that's again one of the special things about the OSF. So what is OSF institutions? So the biggest thing to, if you don't take away anything else, except for one fact, it's that what OSF institutions allows you to do is to support your researchers in making their material on the OSF more fair. So single sign-on authentication for your users, which is what you are paying for with OSF institutions, one of the things. It allows for all of the projects, registrations, preprints that are public that your users have published on the OSF, allows them all to be auto-aggregated and affiliated with your institution, and for the ROR identifier from your institution to be appended to that material. So that institutional identifier that's, part of the metadata that's associated with all of that material then gets shared downstream to places like DataCite and ORCID, and it allows you to more easily aggregate all of that material as output from your research community. Also, institutional branding will appear on associated projects and registrations and preprints. So anybody visiting those pages, downloading material from those projects, reading those registrations, for example, will see that object is associated with your institution, or that researcher is also then associated with your institution. So we provide a lot of materials to make that process seamless. Because a lot of you might already have 100, 200, 1,000 users at your institution who are using the OSF. We try to help bring all of those people onto the OSF and signing in using single sign-on, so that affiliation of material can happen with existing users. And then we try to provide you with as much information as possible, documentation, a sort of communication plan to help any new researchers in your community access, material maybe via a LibGuide or through other kind of newsletter or comms webinars, training that you might offer to your community, so that they know that you are an OSF institutional member, and they know that there is perhaps a specific way in which you, as libraries, want your community to use OSF. So you may want folks to, for example, use it only for scoping or systematic reviews that are published using a specific registration template, and you may direct folks to use that, and that may be a part of the communication that you want to provide when you sign up for the service to your existing and new users. And we can help with that whole process. It's a lot of the work that Gretchen helps with. We want to, make sure that OSF institutional membership is kind of a part of all of the different types of software services that you might provide, and that we help position it as doing something either very specific or maybe something very general for your researchers. And we find that amongst the community of OSF institutional members that exist, there are there's a variety of ways in which libraries, for example, will position the OSF as being useful to their community. So we're happy to share all of that, and we kind of try to help walk you through that process as we sign you up for institutional membership. And also say that if you're interested in knowing what type of material exists on the OSF and has been published by your research community already, how many users you might have, how many active users, we can provide you with that top level data of users, and then also provide you with a kind of CSV of all the public material that's already been published by existing users from your institution. We can't point you directly to their OSF user accounts, but you can find them by looking at that public material. And this can sometimes be helpful for you to understand, who are the stakeholders, the existing stakeholders, the existing departments that are heavy users of the OSF, et cetera. So please do reach out to me after the webinar so that I can help get you that information. A couple of things that I mentioned before that are really powerful when combined with the single sign-on and kind of ROR affiliation and branded affiliation and material is for your research community, you may already have as an institution existing storage tools that you advise researchers use for storage of specific or general types of files. You may also have very specific repositories that you direct users to use. But either way, within the OSF, users can integrate existing tools, including some citation tools, so that within a project, they're not duplicating versions of files or material, that they're actually linking out to other services that may already be paid for. So this is an example of just some of the integrations that can happen. Again, I'll flag that our interface has been upgraded, slightly upgraded. I'll show you an example of that in a minute. But you can see here that this is, an add-on on an OSF project where there's integrations with Box and GitHub and Google Drive and Zotero. So that means in this project space, you can pull in like files and references from all these other tools, but they're affiliated with and associated with the OSF project. I believe we currently have integration with 11 storage providers and 2 citation managers. I'm going to skip this for now, which is just a use case looking at one of our existing members, University of British Columbia, to show you kind of how projects and registrations kind of percolate downstream to DataCite Commons because of that institutional affiliation and what their homepage looks like. I'll just show you an example of another institutional page. This is Carnegie Mellon's institutional page. And you can see that on their institutional page, there are ways to sort of slice and dice the information. And again, I'm looking at this as just an OSF user. You could also access CMU's institutional page as a non-OSF user, just as a reader online, and slice and dice through the public material that their users have published on the OSF. So you can see, for example, here's a project of CMU users. Oops. Let's try a different one. Oh, there it goes. This might be my Wi-Fi, I apologize. And try a different one. Okay, so here's a public project. You can see this is open to the public, and this is affiliated with CMU. So you can see the affiliated institutional branding here. It also means that this material has the ROR, the metadata ROR affiliation appended to it. So you can find this project, for example, in DataCite Commons. And one of the things that is exciting about the new front end revamping of the OSF is that some of the things that have been a little bit tricky to find or navigate within the complexity of, for example, a project are now a lot clearer. So finding different types of components. So you can see here like data, analytic code, materials, papers, supplements are a lot more clearly identified at the front end. And so what that means is within an institution, you can actually immediately see a lot more material straight off the bat. What you will also have as part of your institutional membership is actually a back-end administrative dashboard that gives you a lot more data and the ability to download material and slice and dice through metadata fields of all of the public material that your users have published. I'll just show you an example of what a preprint on the OSF looks like with that institutional affiliation. Gretchen, I'm not sure if you know why there's some hanging right now, but
No, I'm not aware of any issues, but
yeah. So
Zoom
anyway,
always makes things worse.
that's true. So here you can see the affiliated institution here, Carnegie Mellon, for this this OSF preprint that was published by one of their users. So I'll move back to our slides here. So the OSF membership dashboard, there's two types of kind of metrics that you will get as part of your OSF institutional membership. The first is real-time data pulled from our API and put into a dashboard that lets you see summary data, how many logged in users, how many active users, total number of objects, files, storage, etc., private versus public material. Also, who are all of your users? What types of files are they putting on the platform, etc. But you also will get a quarterly report, which shows more kind of longitudinal data, page views, total page views, popular downloads, popular pages. That gives you kind of like a longer view on that real-time data that you get through the dashboard. I'll also hold off on this case study. This is best practices. As part of our assistance in helping you onboard as an OSF institutional member, you will also get a lot of material if you want, or very little if you if you wanted to, that helps understand like how some of our institutional members have best utilized the service to be most impactful. And we also run a lot of collaborative webinars throughout the year with some of our partners and our members that kind of showcases how they've been using the OSF and OSF membership. And as part of membership, being a part of a community of our other OSF institutional members is helpful. There's a lot of info sharing, working groups, groups that help in sort of creating our product roadmap for OSF institutions, all groups that Gretchen helps or does lead. And this is just an example of one of our members that's done quite a bit over the past, I think, 5+ years with their membership at Virginia Commonwealth University. So just to get down to some of the specific details of what the membership includes, an annual membership is $4,999 a year. We do call it a membership, but it is in some ways more similar to a subscription service. You get OSF Institution's branded page, as I showed you, so that's similar to, you know, Carnegie Mellon's page. And you can choose the branding and the language and any links that you might want to include on that page. You have the option for all of your users to log into the OSF using single sign-on. They can auto-affiliate, or because of that, their material is then auto-affiliated with your institution, just the public material. You also get help desk prioritization for your users. So often what happens is that users will ask us questions that are actually more appropriate for the help desk at your library, or we'll see kind of an uptick, for example, in questions around the use of the systematic review registration template. We might actually forward those to you if we can't answer them or they're not appropriate for us to answer. And that's part of how we prioritize our members, OSF users. Gretchen Gigan, who's our member services manager, is sort of your direct point of contact at the Center for Open Science and for the OSF. So you can always email her directly with questions. Also, you get an hour onboarding demo for staff or students or researchers or a group of your choosing. We also set up an admin metrics dashboard that I showed you with that real-time data. And as part of that demo and onboarding, Gretchen kind of leads you through how to best utilize that dashboard. You get quarterly longitudinal metrics reports, as I noted, and you also get access to working groups and the ability to provide feedback on feature development, which is something that has been, you know, actively built, that pipeline by Gretchen, and actually is the reason why we built out the metrics dashboard in the way that we did. That was with a lot of feedback from existing OSF members, institutional members. One of the really big benefits also is you get a 25% discount on COS training. So we actually, you might not be aware of this, but we offer modularized training for actually a number of different stakeholder groups. We can adjust the content for the audience. These are usually 1 to 2.5 hour kind of modules that are taught virtually by members of our team, including Crystal Sultan-Pole, who's our educational manager. She can help answer a lot of different open scholarship questions through those modules. And perhaps Gretchen, you can just drop a link to the COS.io training page. Questions like what is reproducibility? What are some of the current barriers to reproducibility? Simple actions in daily research throughout the research lifecycle can be adapted to be more reproducible, to lessen the load perhaps of data sharing at the end of a research lifecycle. How can making your research more reproducible actually help your career? What is a research data management plan? How can I implement this? How can I implement it on the OSF or on other tools? Are there other types of tools that can help streamline transparent practices? How can I integrate tools I use in OSF to have more efficient workflow? There's a lot of different questions that we can answer with the existing modules that we have. Again, those are offered virtually for up to 40 people per session. And we often work with libraries to, at least in the first years of their membership, provide some basic open scholarship training modules to their community. And that significant discount is part of the membership. So going back all the way to the beginning, what's the difference between just like a free OSF account and a paid membership? The biggest difference is that a free OSF account is for an individual. A paid membership is for an institution or an organization or a group. Both have unlimited workspaces or objects, right? So unlimited projects, unlimited registrations, unlimited preprints. There are storage caps on individual projects, but you can publish as many projects as you'd like. And they both have access to training and onboarding materials, but paid membership also provides things like a single sign-on for a research community. For some of the other tools that we offer, like registrations, you can create, OSF collections, you can create things like custom metadata. You can have curation and moderation for some of the other tools. For OSF for institutions, you also have a branded landing page, help desk prioritization. You can create customized training if you'd like, and onboarding material. And we also have these dashboards and usage reports. So the pricing, as I noted before, for OSF institutions is $4,999. We do have a special discount if you've attended this webinar and you sign our contract before the end of the year. We have a 15% discount for any of you who are kind of on the fence, want to go forward. You can lock that discount in for the first year if you do sign up by the end of the year. If you have questions about anything that I've talked about, or if you want to know a little bit more about your existing OSF kind of user base at your institution and the material that they're publishing to our repository, you can reach out to me or to Gretchen. And with that, I will, for the first time, actually look at the Q&A because I haven't had a chance to do that. Let's see.
We haven't gotten any questions, but folks can enter them now if they have any.
Yep. No questions. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for joining. If you do have questions later, please feel free to reach out, let us know. You'll be getting a follow-up email from us with a recording of the webinar. Also happy to do deeper dive demos with anybody who is thinking seriously about signing up for the service. Thank you, everybody.